on the internet through a screen on their phone and belong and not simply fit in, to fight the temptation and the urge and the burdensome character of settling for fitting in. We are here today to talk about, finally, the transmission of human life, but also the transformation of truth, beauty, and goodness in our lives. Again, I end where I began, and that is simply trust your vows. Trust the grace that God gives you. Trust the vows that your parents made on your behalf at your baptism. Trust the promises that you made on your own behalf at confirmation. And most especially, trust the grace of the promises and vows that you made on your wedding day and have developed throughout marriage. God never stops giving the grace, and he prefers to use the ordinary means by which he decided to give us that grace through Jesus, and that is the sacraments. Now, will he use extraordinary means? Always. But don't look for something extraordinary when the ordinary is right there before you. Prayer is important, but prayer has to spring from the heart, as St. Therese of Lisieux said, and not simply be a recitation of a formula of prayers, of words made in fear. And so finally, returning then quite simply, is that even as difficult as it is today to live the gospel for every one of us, there are no isolated Christians. We can only do so as by being members of the church, the domestic church of the family at home, and also the church gathered here together today, and most especially at the celebration of the Eucharist. Without the church, we can't really be Christians, right? Without the church, we really can't come to the fullness of the enjoyment of our humanity that's transforming us always through God's grace, that leads us most deeply and ultimately into eternal life, where we encounter the life of the Trinity, who is perfect truth, perfect beauty, and perfect goodness. Thank you very much. Okay. We have some time, I guess, for questions, or that's right, okay. You ask me the questions, I'm not gonna ask you the questions. So, just so we're clear on the ground rules, so to speak.
Does anybody want to ask the bishop a question? Come on, ladies, don't be shy. No? Okay.
Okay.
Mary.
See, well, I think there's some. Oh, there's a sneak. All right, no, not that lucky.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I'm Barbara McGee, and with all my heart, I thank you for being here and being our bishop and our father.
You're welcome.
And I want to tap into what is one of the most amazing traditions in your family that you did that you know has influenced you as a priest, as a shepherd?
Well, that's a very good question. No, I know there's something. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, I look back and I think the priority of even getting to Mass, all right, I think was very important. Even though we didn't always go all together. My father's not Catholic, and sometimes my mother couldn't make so, but the importance of all of us to go, all right, on Sunday, just to show up. And then I think that was, I think, an important tradition where I knew it was a priority, and that kept going. I think also, the other thing I was thinking about this recently, just simply is that the importance of praying for the dead. Now, I know that sounds a bit morbid, but I don't think it really is in our Catholic life. In other words, like, that death doesn't have the final word, all right? And that just because somebody has died doesn't mean you don't belong to them anymore, or vice versa. And so I had an older sister who died in childhood, and we would go and pray at the cemetery on the anniversary of her death, anniversary of birth, and around the holidays. And I think that was very important. Also going to funerals, all right, and then also not being hidden from the dying. I think sometimes, and this is a judgment that a mother and father has to make that's particular to them, because you know your children better. But I think it's wrong to entirely attempt to hide the reality of dying and the death of loved ones from children, because it sets up a false sense of expectation that somehow, ultimately we're going to, none of us get out of this alive, so to speak, all right? And we're all baptized ultimately to die well, right? To enter into eternal life, and that this world is passing away as we know it, but we have responsibilities here on earth, but there's something bigger than this. I think some of this is, I think that's a very important thing that was an aspect in my own development in our family, is that with that came things like the most important goal of life is not to make a lot of money. All right, it's not in this world. Now, if it comes, it's great. If you work for it, that's great. But with that comes a lot of responsibilities. And I think there was also a sense that with that also comes a presumption that somehow just heaven is something that I passively receive, just like with death. I don't know what it's like, but it's somewhere. And not really a state that begins here and now with the life of grace that we grow and develop towards. I think those were very important. That's a very important thing. I think it shows itself, the challenge shows itself is, again, this comes back down to how we're treating and understanding the body, but there's a passive ignoring of the reality of the resurrection of the dead that's promised us, and the reverence of the human body as being human. And that can be for anything, it's just people mistreating the remains of loved ones. Cremation is permitted, provided it's not done as a defiance of the resurrection. But how one treats the cremains of the body are very important. It shouldn't be made into jewelry. Shouldn't be just thrown away. I'm telling you a true story. On this, there's a lot of things out there where people are trying to grasp at meaning, and it's a meaning that's given to them through the gift of faith if they'd be willing to accept it. So that's a kind of that's quite an answer to your question, but anyway, I think that's important.
Anybody else?
Well, I'll get off death, I promise.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, Bishop.
Hello.
Thank you again for coming to be with us. So I have a 1-year-old son, and I already noticed a bit of a devotion to Our Lady. And I was curious if your mother played a role at all in your vocation to the priesthood, and if you would mind sharing about that, or if you have any other female figures in your life that played a role.
Certainly. My mother did play a role in my vocation. I think how she did that, she didn't discourage me, all right, from it, but she also she was very careful to be clear that it wasn't about her, all right, because I kind of think, I remember one conversation, this vaguely, where she goes, if you're going to do this, you better do it, just like that, and You know, in other words, don't be an ex-priest. You know, I mean, it was like that. But I think that was the encouragement of it. I think just both my mother and my father, by just their life of being dedicated and good people, all right, and generous, and then also I think, and people who certainly did more than passively acknowledge God. I mean, but I think that was the greatest influence for me. I mean, the Catholic education I received was very helpful. Not perfect, as always, you know, but very helpful. So I don't know. How, can I ask you this? I'm very curious. How is your 1-year-old showing devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary? I really got to ask that question.
Oh, okay. Here, no.
So he loves to look at pictures of the Blessed Mother. And he has a picture of Mary above his changing table, and he waves at her. And he likes to look at her. And so he's very interested in general, too, at the Mass. He loves to watch the moment of consecration.
Really?
Yeah, when the bells are rung, he
see,
looks right at the front at the altar.
I
So
see.
I'm probably a proud mom, but
That's true. Well,
I see a little bit of it. I mean, he loves to wave to Mary. So.
just wait till he reaches the age of reason. I mean, that's really great. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh,
Oh, thank you, Grandma. All right, that's the unbiased vote of 2 people. Very good.
oh, clear over there. Is it you, Gloria?
It's a pleasure to meet you.